with you today. Thanks so much, Deborah, and thanks to all of you for showing up today. I am just really grateful that you are here to talk about climate solutions and beyond. Really, your commitment to integrating these concepts into all the games you work on. So first, Elizabeth Bagley, like Deborah mentioned. I also have a colleague here, Crystal Chiselle, who will hop in later during the Q&A. Hi, Crystal. There's Crystal. I'm super grateful that she could join us today. So I'm going to share some slides. That doesn't mean that I am trying to be fancy or don't want you to interrupt me. You all are very welcome to interrupt at any time and ask any questions. Slides just kind of help me figure out where I'm going. So first, I just want to say thanks so much for thinking about ways to have a serious impact in the world, because you all know that games are one of the major shapers of our culture around the world. And I'm grateful that you're thinking about ways to really shape that impact. I'm coming to you from Sitka, Alaska. This is a view from just up the hill. So while I am not directly in the forest with my phone, I am very much surrounded by forest and ocean, and it's a pretty sweet place to be. So and grateful for the Tlingit who have stewarded this land since time immemorial. I want to start by getting us all thinking. So I'd love to invite you to the chat, and I'd love to invite you to answer this question. What comes to mind when you think of climate change and global warming? Go ahead and let's pop some thoughts in the chat, please. All right, we have when people think of climate change and global warming, we have melting ice caps, we have disaster, we have terror, increasing and worsening natural disasters, apocalypse, immediate action. We have a need for populations to adapt. Lots of things are coming to mind when we think about climate change and global warming, that we need more than an individual to make changes, a crisis, injustice, rapidly changing ecosystems. That's a lot, y'all. And I didn't tell you to bring your covers and put them over your head because this was going to be a super depressing talk. But I wanted to start with this because this is not my question. This is actually a question that was asked to 14,000 people around the world as part of a GlobeScan study. And when those 14,000 people were asked this question, here's what they said. 44% of those people, when they were asked what comes to mind when you think of climate change and global warming, said that they think about the outcomes of climate change, like changing weather, like we mentioned, melting ice caps. That's what people were thinking about. Almost half of the people were thinking about outcomes. 18% of those people said that they think about the causes of climate change, things like the burning of fossil fuels like coal, oil, and natural gas. And here's where I really want you to lean in a bit, because only 3% of those 14,000 people from around the world said that they think about solutions. So everybody, there's an incredible opportunity here for us to really start a conversation, not about fear, not about disaster, not about tragedy. We know that things are already really challenging, and we have the opportunity and the obligation to step into this space where we can really start to move climate solutions forward. And that's what I want to talk about today, because I work for, as Deborah mentioned, Project Drawdown, which is the world's leading resource for climate solutions. That's what we focus on. We were formed back in 2014, and in 2017, the team, including Crystal, came out with the book called Drawdown. And that really shifted the conversation away from fear and doom and gloom to a space where people realize, hey, there are solutions to the climate crisis. Let's start working together, putting those into place in our homes, in our communities, to really start to move to this space that we call drawdown. Now, we have kind of a weird word. People are like, why is drawdown in your name? Well, actually, drawdown is a scientific term, and it's a term that indicates a future point in time when greenhouse gas levels, those heat trapping gases that we are putting into the atmosphere, when they stop climbing and they start to steadily decline. So this blue dot moment is the moment of drawdown. And it's a place that we need to reach as quickly, as safely, and as equitably as possible. But until the book came out and until a drawdown was formed, people didn't necessarily know, how do we get there? How do we reach this moment of drawdown? Well, we're going to start with a little bit of science that kind of helps us understand the whole picture. Because once we understand the picture, we can work backwards and figure out how to reverse engineer it so that we can reach drawdown. So let's first start by imagining the climate equation. And this gray box in the middle of the screen is the atmosphere. That's all of those heat trapping gases that humans put in year over year into the atmosphere. So one question might be, well, where do those gases come from? We know that they come from 6 main sources, about a quarter of them, so 25%. And these are global numbers, by the way. These are not US numbers. These are because the atmosphere doesn't care, right? The atmosphere doesn't care if these emissions are coming from the UK or if they're coming from Alaska. Like, all of these emissions are in the atmosphere and they're doing what they're doing, creating that thick heat trapping blanket around our planet. 25% of those emissions come from the ways we produce electricity. Another 24% come from our food, agriculture, and land use sector. 21% come from industry, excuse me, 14% from transportation, 6% from buildings, and 10% come from other energy related emissions. This is great. We know what the problem is. These are the sources. And I know you all heard from Peter yesterday, and he probably talked about trees, I would imagine, since he wrote Hidden Life of Trees. And that's where the other side of the equation comes in. We've got these sources that go into the atmosphere, those heat trapping gases, but nature does an enormous favor for us. Nature by itself already is taking out about 40% of those heat trapping gases we're putting into the atmosphere. About 24% of those are coming out from land-based sinks, trees, that's photosynthesis, right? And about 17% are coming from coastal and ocean sinks, also through photosynthesis, like kelp forests and things like that. Now, for those of you who are doing some quick math in your head, that still leaves about 60% of those heat trapping gases behind. And that's what creates that thick blanket around the planet. So we know where the gases are coming from. And we know what nature can do for us, which is incredible. So this helps us identify the suite of solutions that we have in hand today to reach drawdown. And here they are. The first thing we need to do is we need to stop those sources. We need to turn off all the taps. We don't need any more of those gases flowing into the atmosphere. So our solutions, you'll see these are really similar to what I just showed you at the sources part of the diagram. We need to find solutions related to electricity, food, agriculture, and land use, industry, transportation, and buildings. And we have loads of solutions in all those spaces. We also need to support and enhance the sinks of carbon dioxide found in nature. And we need to improve society. So for those of you who caught on to this is actually the 3 S's we talk about: sources, sinks, and society. The 3 S's for action. These are 3 interconnected areas that we need to move as quickly, safely, and equitably as possible to get these solutions on the ground in our homes and communities. So today, I want to talk about what we can do with these solutions. We know what they are, and what we need to do is get them into the world to reach drawdown, to really to get to a place where we're back in balance with the planet's living systems. The solutions that we know that, again, we have them today, they're not technological, sci-fi ideas that are going to be 40 years in the future. All of the solutions that we study at Project Drawdown, we have in the world today. They are financially feasible, they are scalable, they avoid or they reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and many of them will make life a whole lot better for lots and lots of people on the planet. So these solutions are tools of possibility in the face of what's a seemingly impossible challenge. And we know, especially through games, you reach over 1 billion people through your games. Widespread awareness and understanding of climate solutions is really vital. It's vital so that we can kindle agency and affect change across the world. So while we might not all want to join in climate marches, some of us might, there are so many ways for us to step up and step in. And we know that people and institutions of all kinds in all places have roles to play in the transformation that's required for us to reach a drawdown. So the solutions that we'll talk about today are really the synthesis of collective wisdom and collective action that are unfolding all around the globe today. And one of the main things I want us to think about is that climate solutions don't just address those heat trapping gases. That's really important, and we need to address heat trapping gases, but climate solutions often have what we call co-benefits that contribute to a better, more equitable world. Climate solutions are rarely just about the climate. For example, climate solutions that curb indoor air pollution, here's an example of a clean cook stove, are also human health solutions. And climate solutions that impact, that work on ecosystems, restoring ecosystems, the kinds of things that I'm sure Peter talked about yesterday, are also biodiversity solutions. Many climate solutions create jobs, they foster resilience to climate impacts like storms and droughts, and they can bring other environmental benefits like safeguarding our precious water resources. And we know that climate solutions can advance social and economic equity if they're used wisely and well, with attention to who decides, who benefits, and how any drawbacks are mitigated. And it takes intention, it takes care, and it takes courage to move climate solutions forward in ways that heal rather than deepen systemic injustices. And all of us have the opportunity and the obligation to co-create systems that are safe and equitable, ensuring that both people and the planet can thrive together. So I wonder, what will you do? How do you want to share climate solutions with your audiences? One really important step on the climate solution journey is just to start talking about it, right? We could just letting people know that there are solutions in this seemingly impossible challenge. There are lots and lots of glimmers of hope, more like enormous rays of hope. And we want people to know that so they can start putting those into action. Now, I started thinking about the power of games for storytelling back in graduate school at the University of Wisconsin, Madison. And that's where I was studying environmental science as well as educational psychology. And the educational psychology area was specifically focused on how do people learn? And I wanted to know, how do people learn about the environment? But I realized not everybody has the kind of childhood I have, where I grew up on a farm in Western Wisconsin, playing with goats and sheep all the time. So how do we get the masses to really connect with nature and with the natural world in ways that matter? And so I designed a video game. I designed Land Science, which was a game where players manipulated zoning codes in their city to start to understand the interconnections that are inherent in complex systems that humans create. Games, for me, are a way of making the invisible visible. Things like the carbon dioxide pollution that comes out of our cars. Imagine if every mile, a huge or after every gallon burned in a car, there was a huge 20-pound brick of carbon dioxide that laid on the road. Just like imagine horse and buggies, right? Where the horses had their droppings. What if the car droppings were visible? How might that change our behavior? Right? Making invisible concepts visible. That's something that games can do so well. And games let people try things that are too complex or too risky or too expensive in the real world around us. And we know that games are low stakes playgrounds to experiment in. They're the ultimate in experimentation. And through your designs, people learn about systems through experimentation, and they solve problems that are consequential right in that moment. And they are thinking about trade-offs and the interdependence of those systems. That's not the way that we have opportunities to think every day as we kind of go through this real life. And games can offer such important opportunities to think like that. And hopefully there's ways to translate that into the on the ground climate solutions that we need to put into place today. So I love the possibility of reaching huge audiences through games. And I spent a summer working with Walt Disney Imagineering, and that provided me with an opportunity to work on a team with artists, game designers, educators, and fantastically talented Imagineers. And so I finished graduate school and quickly decided to leave academia and took a job as a learning designer at LeapFrog, which is an educational an educational games company where I design developmentally appropriate science content for our books, our DVDs, and our video games. So I was able to make science concepts jump off the page and come to life for youth. And that was incredible. That's another thing that games can do, right? You can take concepts that are seemingly really boring, or, you can't necessarily get to complex concepts because you have to go through 10 years of school before you get to the really interesting stuff. Games can bring that front and center right away, which is so, so important. So bringing these concepts to life is, one that was really inspiring for me. And so at Project Drawdown, I think about, how do we bring these climate solutions to life? How do we, through Drawdown Learn, thinking about how do we connect people with these solutions so they actually care and do something? So a question for you is, how might you provide your players, the players of your games, with a story? You all are incredible storytellers. And how might we create a hero's journey that creates that win state on climate? We know there's a win state. It's called Drawdown. These are some of the solutions that will get us there. And so in Project Drawdown, we make sure that people know that there are solutions to climate change. And we've got a whole bunch of different ways that we communicate about those solutions. And here's one. So we're going to dive in. You'll see on the bottom, the land sinks. This is what it looks like expanded out. So within each of those areas of our framework, and all of this, by the way, if you want to dive into it, is on our website, which is drawdown.org. And if you were to click on land sinks, you would see information about all of these different solutions. So let me tell you what you're looking at here, just so you can kind of understand all these bubbles. What you're looking at is this mosaic of climate solutions focused on land sinks, areas that are sequestering or pulling down carbon from the atmosphere. There are four main solution areas within land sinks. One of them is the importance of shifting agricultural practices, protecting and restoring ecosystems, using degraded land, and addressing waste and diets. So within each of those areas, there are a whole bunch of different solutions that we need to put into place as quickly, safely, and equitably as possible. So if we look at shifting agricultural, let's look at protecting and restoring ecosystems. What you'll notice is tropical forest restoration is the biggest bubble. Now that does mean something. Across all of these bubbles, the sizes are scaled relative to one another. So the size of the bubble corresponds to the impact potential of those solutions if scaled worldwide, right? Or if scaled in the places where they're appropriate, because not all of these solutions are going to fit in every community. And that's another thing to remember, right? Bigger doesn't necessarily mean that's the only thing you should focus on. We need all of these solutions, this whole mosaic. So let's say that you don't live in a tropical forest. Probably most of us don't. And so that might not be a solution that we can impact quite as easily. What about some of the other solutions? So just because your solution isn't big does not mean it's not important. They are all very important. We need them all put into place. So the different colors correspond to two different scenarios that our team modeled. And there's more details about that on our website and in our latest publication, which is called the Drawdown Review. And that came out last year, and that's free on our website. So we think about these four areas with chock full of solutions that we can reach to draw down and really help nature do what it already does well. So we know we've got these are not 10, 20, 30 years down the road. These are solutions in hand today. And it's great to know that they exist, but it's even better to connect these solutions to stories of people implementing them in the real world so that people can see themselves reflected as change makers out in the world. So you all are storytellers and you tell stories in incredibly immersive ways. Let's create the hero's journey, a journey like the one that Will Harris is on. Will is on the edge of Bluffton, Georgia, which is one of the poorest counties in the United States. And Will and his family have turned white oak pastures into one of the largest pasture-raised livestock operations in the entire country. It's a grand experiment in the deindustrialization of agriculture. White Oak Pastures supports 110 employees, but those employees don't feed animals. They feed the microbes in the soil, and the microbes feed the soil, and the soil feeds the plants, and the plants feed the animals, and they breed and they grow, and the animals are turned into meat and they're sold for money to keep that whole system going. The health of the soil is connected to the health of the community, and the healthy soil sequesters or stores more carbon, acting as an important land-based sink, which is a critical climate solution. So there's an example of a story related to a land sink, and how might we tell immersive stories that weave those climate solutions in as a potential win state? And how might we think about leveling up, right? Another thing I love about games is that games truly meet you where you're at, right? You're going to be met where you're at, and you will be scaffolded to, through the levels in ways that don't make you throw your controller at the television. Because if you did that, no one would play the games, right? So you all are so thoughtful about ways that we level up. And most of us have heard about these climate solutions. This is the electricity sector. And most of us have heard of a lot of these big ones like solar panels and wind turbines. And those messages are super important. We're glad people know about that, but they might get a little stale and lose their luster after a while. So great news. We have so many other solutions that need to be put into place just as quickly, safely, and equitably as possible. Solutions like, check this out, ocean power. So using the power of our tides, and this is happening in a number of places around the world. This is an extremely exciting and solution that we have emerging. Or dynamic glass. Check out what people can do with glass these days. Or even, this is where I used to work at the California Academy of Sciences, green, cool living roofs. So really thinking of ways that we can level up, like maybe moving beyond or in addition to solar panels and wind, how can we talk about some of the other climate solutions that people might not have heard of before to really give them other vantage points to think about and learn from? And I think about that in the context of a quote from Robert Anton Wilson, that the future is up for grabs. It belongs to any and all of us who take the risk and accept the responsibility of consciously creating the future that they want. Our role as culture shapers, as people who draw the public in to tell a story and to connect with, is really to show people, to show players what is possible. We are the people who are alive today who get to co-create the next chapter of life on Earth. So let's show people what's possible. Let's show them the solutions that they can put into place in their homes and in their communities. So let's give them a chance to try on different futures. Here's what our transportation solution set looks like. How might we, and this is a very low-hanging fruit, but show alternative modes of transportation in our games, or design environments that have walkable cities, places we love, and some of you live in, like Copenhagen and Amsterdam. They didn't become walkable cities overnight. The people in Copenhagen and Amsterdam and many of the other extremely incredibly walkable places, they worked with their policymakers. They changed the system. And it took decades, but they've gotten to an incredible place. How do we create the future that we want? Help us see what is possible so that we can create it together. Let's also think about ways to experiment with systems. We do not do a good job of training people to think about systems level problems in our academic world. But games are amazing at teaching systems, because games are complex systems with different windows for players to peek in and experiment and play around in. Games are so good at getting fundamental ideas into your head, and you all are designing these systems every day. Players, give players an opportunity to discover how the system functions and how to manipulate that system to make it work to reach a win state. Now, one of the most complicated systems in our global economy today is our food, agriculture, and land use system. How does our food get from one point to another, and everything in between? So how might you give players opportunities to explore the interconnectedness of complex systems? So, this is the food sector, where we think about addressing waste in diets, shifting agricultural practices, and protecting ecosystems. Now, are there ways to incorporate concepts like protecting ecosystems or reducing waste through gameplay, so that players can start to see how their actions can scale up and have positive impacts on the larger system. There's all these different levels of agency we work at, right? Everything from what do we do at the individual level to the multinational level. And we need action at all of those places within these complex systems. And we need people to be change agents for good. And in games, we can try on different roles and decide to be a change agent for good. Through your storytelling, through your designs, you're giving players the power to change the course of the world, and you make us the hero. So how can we design games where solving problems in a game environment inspires players to solve problems in the real world with more confidence? If we look at solutions in the building sector, we see a bunch of solutions. Some are low-hanging fruit, some are more like dynamic glass that are more kind of niche-y at the moment. But there are solutions like improved cook stoves, which is a powerful action and a climate solution. Going back to the co-benefits, because it's also a human health solution and it's a solution that improves society. So being a change agent for good doesn't necessarily mean that we need to wait around for fancy technological solutions. At Project Drawdown, we know that we have enough solutions in hand today. We just need more people. We need more people to put them into place in their communities. And we need to do that through encouraging collaboration, because everyone has an opportunity and an obligation to step up and step into the climate change space and put those solutions into action. And this work shouldn't be done alone. And games are incredible examples of cooperative and collaborative spaces where people are working together to solve problems in unique ways. So in your games, how might you encourage and incentivize cooperation in service of tackling big problems like climate change? We know that climate change and social systems are profoundly connected, and those connections often offer up solutions that are overlooked. Some initiatives primarily designed to ensure rights and foster equality also have cascading benefits to climate change. Things like high quality voluntary reproductive health care and high quality inclusive education are fundamental human rights and cornerstones of gender equality. So in more direct ways, we know that making strides in health and education can also benefit climate. Now, for those of you who want to learn more and want to kind of connect some of the global solutions that we've come up with at Project Drawdown to solutions that might make sense in your games, I've got a couple resources for you. One is from our partner at ecochallenge.org. They have a free drawdown eco challenge where you can take measurable action on climate. Now, what they've done is they've taken all of our solution areas and you can create teams, you track your progress, all while putting climate solutions into place. So there are folks all over the world who are taking part in the Drawdown Eco Challenge. And if you want to learn more about some of the solutions in action around the world, I highly recommend the Solutions Journalism Network. They have a sub-project called Solutions U that has a series of collections about climate solutions journalism. Again, these stories are incredible. People putting solutions into action all over the world. There are heroes' journeys within all of those stories. So I highly recommend checking them out. And if you want to know more about, what are some of the steps to putting these solutions into place in your community, it's a great group out of Ireland called ChangeX, and ChangeX is coming up with 5-step plans and blueprints for people to, for example, start a community fridge in their community. So I would recommend checking out ChangeX, because we all have a role to play in implementing climate solutions. And if we do all these things, if we reduce the sources by implementing solutions that are focused on electricity, food, agriculture, and land use, industry, transportation, and buildings, if we support sinks on land and in the ocean, and if we improve society through healthcare and education, we can actually reach drawdown. So I've shared some climate solutions with you today. You have so many ideas, I'm sure, swirling through your mind. So what's next? Well, I've got one thing that I'm going to throw at you, actually 2 things that I'll throw at you next week, everybody. It'll be next week. We are launching Climate Solutions 101. which is a series of highly produced videos that dive into the science behind climate solutions. These videos are going to be freely available on our website, and I would love for you to use them as jumping off points for your discussions about climate solutions that can lead to action. If you want to go deeper into the science, actually next week, our executive director will be hosting a webinar about that covers much more about the science of drawdown. And if you want to dive deeper into the drawdown research, highly recommend you check this out. That's at drawdown.org and our website /events. So I want to come back to the chat for a minute and ask you, what comes to mind now when you think about climate change and global warming? I'd love to get a pulse for where you all are at. All right, that there are solutions, possibilities, challenges, green roofs, dynamic glass, achievable, bamboo. These chats are sounding a little different from when we started, which is amazing. +1 to the dynamic glass, which is kind of crazy, new agey stuff. I love it. Good feeling. Oh my gosh, you all are the best. Hope. We've got this. We know that we have these solutions, everybody. We don't need to wait for technology. This is our mosaic of climate solutions. Let's get them into place at all levels of agency. And let's think about how you might lead the change. Your game shape culture around the world. How might you harness that power to help us create the future we want? What do you want to reach towards? The reality of intervening in a complex system is that no one of us can do it all. We all have an opening to show up as problem solvers and as change makers and contribute in significant ways, even when we feel small. Society has a choice to make about what shape this transformation will take. Will we employ the collective courage and determination and the diversity of solutions to move the world towards a balance with Earth's living systems? Will we pursue climate action in ways that heal systemic injustices and foster resilience, well-being, and equality? Who will we choose to be at this pivotal moment in human history? Because together, we can leverage the solutions at hand today and build a bridge from where we are now to the world we want for ourselves, for all life, and most importantly, for generations yet to come. A better path is still possible. So let's turn that possibility into reality. Thanks so much, everybody.
Wow, thank you so much, Elizabeth. I have little tingles, little chills, because I feel very inspired. And it is amazing to see from that one simple question at the beginning and end, once you just reframe the whole problem and start to look at what can you actually do, how much more encouraged and inspired you are to actually do something about it and take action. So thank you so much for giving us that perspective. I'm sure there are loads of questions. Feel free to, like I said, just unmute yourself and jump in or throw them into the chat, however you would like to go at it. I can already hear somebody unmuted. Go, go, go.
I'm sorry. I'm really sorry to break you off like this. Yeah, gorgeous talk. Loved it. Very, very cool. I bought your book in 2017, the Drawdown Project book. And I'm curious, you mentioned that you've just, there's an updated report available on the website. Do you feel that a lot has changed since 2017?
Thank you so much for that question. I'm awkwardly trying to put a link in. Sorry, I'm trying to be smooth, and I'm like the least smooth person ever. Okay, here we go. We're gonna do this. We got this. Okay, here we go. That is the link to the Drawdown Review, which is our latest update. And there are some great advances in the Drawdown Review, so I'd highly recommend it. It's also free, so please just go ahead and download it. And one of the main so there are definitely different numbers in terms of the book. Really had information about ranking the solutions, which we still do in the Drawdown Review, but the tone of the Drawdown Review has slightly shifted to be more focused on the 3 S's: reducing sources, supporting sinks, and improving society. And so The organization is slightly different, but I think the main difference and what we spent more time in, and when I say we, I actually started at Project Drawdown the week that it launched. So I have nothing to do with the incredible writing and research that went behind it. And I'm so grateful for people like Crystal who do. But there's a really great narrative around the co-benefits. And there's also another big chunk I didn't mention that's in the drawdown review about accelerators, things that we, what's going to get us to draw down faster. Things like, how are we going to shape culture? How are we going to set goals? How are we going to alter rules and policy? And so there's more of a discussion of that in the drawdown review. So I would highly recommend checking it out. There's great info there. And Crystal, do you want to add anything to the drawdown review in the book?
Sure. I'll just say that Project Drawdown's research and analysis is ongoing, and it's a meta-analysis of the latest research and data about existing climate solutions. So there are some changes in the drawdown review as new data was gathered by our research team and modeling was refined. So there is some shifting of the outcomes from the modeling, and primarily we model the potential gigatons of carbon dioxide equivalent that will be reduced in the atmosphere from implementing and scaling these solutions. So there is some shifting of those numbers as our team gathered more recent data.
So cool. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for leaning into the data. And, I think that what's very much a constant is the fact that there are solutions, there is hope. We just have to move them off the page and into the world.
Well said.
More
Thank you.
Thanks so much, FIFA. More questions? While you're thinking, I have one. I think a lot of the time when we're talking about, trying to find solutions or creating awareness, etc., like the idea of greenwashing comes up a lot. And how do you, I guess, sort of see the difference between bringing this awareness and like hope, like you said, to people who may be completely overwhelmed and bogged down by all of this different messaging with, okay, but where like the trackable sort of actions that people are taking that we can measure, etc. Like, where is the balance of that, and how do you tackle that?
I think one way to start is really meeting people where they're at. Now, of course, it depends on how we're connecting with people, right? But during talks like this, having people ask clarifying questions is super, super helpful. For example, here, we know there's loads of research that around the one and done mentality, right? So if people recycle and they perceive recycling as a really important climate or environmental solution, that might be the only thing they do, and they might not do anything else because they feel like they've checked the box. Now, that's a really problematic, when we think about the scale and scope of change that we need to have happen, that's a problematic mindset for people to be in, right? So we need to make sure that through our messaging, we are being really clear about what the solutions are and at what scale, and that we're helping people find ways to connect with those solutions in ways that matter, also where they can get quick wins, but keep that sustained action going, right? Because this is not a one and done. This is not a flip a switch and everything's better kind of problem we're up against. I mean, I think we're seeing that with humanity right now in the COVID-19 pandemic, right? Where so many people want the quick switch, or they just want to flip a switch and have everything be better, but it's this much, it's a much more complex system. And so in a complex system, we need people to listen to science, like that's really important. We know that with the COVID pandemic, we know that with climate. We also need people to act at all different levels of agency and not just say, oh, I recycle, I'm done, I'm good, but to to kind of understand all of the different levers that we can pull in these complex systems. How can we write to our or speak at our city council meetings, right? How can we have a voice on a policy level? What can we do at a business level? What can you all do from games in terms of having green nudges or, entire storylines that are about climate solutions? So I think all of those things together, that's not a very succinct answer, Deborah, sorry, but I think all of those, understanding that it's a complex system and there isn't this beautiful switch that we can switch or flip, whatever. There's not a switch we can flip, but there's, all of we need to be doing, pulling lots of levers within that complex system. All right, I'll take a breath and see if Crystal wants to add anything.
Yeah, I think that Project Drawdown came into existence for exactly that reason. So the whole purpose of this ongoing research effort is to point to existing solutions that actually have an impact on levels of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. So that's why we think and have heard from many around the world that our work is a great resource for for not greenwashing, but what are the actual solutions that will make a difference for climate change. Because all of it is based on science, on data, and direct impact on the atmosphere.
Thanks both. I'll be quiet now.
I would have a question. I saw on one of your charts bamboo production or something like that. What can you say about which plants are absorbing most carbon, and can you recommend a read about that?
That's a great question. So focusing on bamboo production, I'm going to send you to the leading resource I know about in terms of stand by. This is me being awkward again. So the leading resource that I look to is actually the Crowther Lab in Zurich. So that is who I would always go to for content about what trees, where, what age, because Georg, to your point, it just planting a tree for the sake of planting a tree is not what we're talking about at Project Drawdown, right? Like, it really matters when we think about the potential of a tree to sequester carbon over time. It very much matters what kind of tree it is, where it's planted, it needs to be cared for well, the age of the tree. For example, where I am in Southeast Alaska and kind of in the Canadian boreal forest, which is just to my east, that boreal forest used to be, up until a few years ago, a sink of carbon dioxide because of the age of the forest. Now that the forest has shifted in terms of the age set and the age class of the forest, it's now become a source of carbon dioxide, right? So while so forests can shift and change from sinks to sources. And so I would always recommend the Crowther Lab. And on every one of our solution pages at drawdown.org, we have technical summaries if you really want to dive into the nuances of the science and dive into the resources. So if you want to really go all science-y, that I would highly recommend that space as well.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Hey, just a very quick question. On one of your slides, you had a wonderful recap chart, just summing up all the different solutions. And it's I couldn't find it on the Drawdown project website. It doesn't seem to be part of the Drawdown graphics. Is there somewhere we could access it? I would love to print it on my wall.
Oh my gosh, I love it. Well, okay, so I have a couple things. I just put a link in there. I don't think, were you talking about the circle, Arnaud?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, that one I don't have yet. I will, hold on a second. I think I have it. I will have it next week in the
awesome.
key graphics. It's not up there yet, but we will have that soon. Yeah, awesome. And we're working on also just so y'all know, we do have a poster that has all of the solutions on it. We're just working out a way to be able to send it to folks. So stay tuned for that. The best way to really stay in touch with what Project Drawdown is doing is to sign up for our newsletter. So on our website, we've got a newsletter. We don't spam you very often at all, but we said maybe about once a month, we'll send some updates, and we would love to have you join us there and or on social media. We are at Project Drawdown on all social media.
Great.
Thanks for wanting to have that on your wall. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for the questions, guys. We've got just a few minutes left. Any last minute burning questions for Elizabeth or for Crystal?
I might pop two more things, if it's okay, in the chat box, just some fun ideas. I just put iNaturalist in the chat. That is a community science tool where people can come together, and you take your phone out and for me, I use it because I'm not originally from Alaska. I use it as a pocket field guide. So if I don't know a plant or an animal, I could take a picture of it, and the AI behind the underlying the app can automatically identify the species, which is amazing. So you can go outside, and so it's people have called it the Pokemon Go of nature, which is kind of fun to think about that. And then Litterati is another app that I'm going to pop in the chat box, where people are gamifying picking up litter. And Jeff, who's the founder of Litterati, what he does with all those data. So people take pictures of the litter they're picking up, and then he aggregates it based on the brand. And then he sends that to like Hershey's or Doritos. And he's like, hey, look at all of your trash that's in our environment. What are you going to do about it? So he uses that for corporate leverage. So I think that's another really interesting way to get people who are out and about already to use use the technology in their pockets to really make change and have a lot of fun. Like solving climate does not have to be boring and fearful and painful. Like, let's make it fun. Let's actually, let's engage people in the ways we know they like to be engaged.
Very cool. I did see one question in the chat from Sebastian. I don't know if you can see it.
Great question about nuclear power as a solution. So that one is that is super interesting. I mean, I think we know with the time frames that we've looked at on through our research, nuclear might be necessary for a slight bridge, but we're not advocating for building new nuclear plants, right? We know that we have the technology today in solar, in wind, and lots of other renewable energy forms and those can be scaled up so much more quickly and are much less damaging than something like a nuclear power plant. But we do know at the moment that having nuclear as part of a mix in some parts of the world will help us reach drawdown faster. Crystal, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I was just going to say, we definitely acknowledge the problems with nuclear. And initially there was debate internally about whether to include it. But the object really was to give an objective view of existing solutions. And so we came down on the side of including nuclear. But as Elizabeth said, it's viewed as a bridge solution.
Yeah, thanks, Crystal. And kind of going off of the most recent question put in here. So when we think about what we need to do to reach drawdown, those 3 S's are super important, right? Reduce sources, support sinks, and improve society. And while I don't want to say there's necessarily a ranked order to them, because I think especially improving society is woven throughout all of them, we need to reduce sources right away, right? Like that, the sinks, planting trees, is a great, really important thing to do, and among other sink solutions, but those take time. Reducing sources, like turning off the tap, we can do that right now, and that's what we need to do. That's what we need to focus on, kind of short term. Actually, we've got, so we need to think about, what's the whole board. Our executive director just wrote about a chess game, and now we've got all the pieces on the board and we need to move them strategically. Reducing sources is really critical as an early move and as early wins. We also, though, need to be thinking about supporting sinks and planting those trees and making sure the kelp forests are healthy, because while they might not be sequestering the amount of carbon we need them to sequester tomorrow, they will be doing that in 20 years. And so we can't, when was the best time to plant a tree? 20 years ago. When's the second best time? Today. So thinking about kind of the scale, the rollout of all of the solutions. I hope that made sense.
Yes, made a lot of sense. Definitely appreciate that.
Crystal, did I
Last
miss
question?
anything
Oh,
you
sorry.
want to add? I was just kind of running my mouth.
I was just going to offer to send our poster to anyone here who's interested. If you could maybe put your mailing address in the chat, or maybe
Crystal, can we give them your email? Is that okay?
Oh, sure, sure.
Okay,
So,
I'll pop your email if that's right. Ooh, thanks, Crystal. She knows how to get to the stash of posters.
I can also, if it's easier logistically, I can just send out a mass email to everybody within the teams and see if they want it and just give you one list. Does that help? Or are you sending out individually to people?
I think a list would be awesome, especially because then you could reach people who weren't able to be here today. But yeah, we're happy to send out posters. We'd love to do that. Thanks, Crystal.
Cool. Any last minute things? I think.
Any other game recommendations of games that I should play? What should I be playing? I should have asked for that at the beginning. If you have game recommendations, I'd love to know in the chat. And you all feel free to reach out to us. We are just so excited. I've been looking forward to this and the ability or the opportunity to connect with all of you. So thanks so much.